Hi traders, it's Roberto. It's Friday, 21st September. I wanted to send out this um, trade update on pound Australian dollar because this is a very typical, this very common occurrence on divergence. If you understand divergence, you know that when wave patterns on MACD go in the opposite direction of price, and there's a few components to this, then these are very, very consistent trade setups. So let me just go over it. We started trading this on Monday. If you remember, you took the signal to trade, and then the market retraced to a 61% retracement level. And this is very common. This is a 4-hour chart. So let me just go over this because you're going to see this quite often, and I'll give you a few examples. Here is divergence, the initial divergence on the pound Australian dollar. There's the initial trend line break. The market sold off, and then we exited this trade down at the support. And then what happened, it retraced up to the 61% retracement level, and that's where we took our second trade. And then the first target was at the support. Now, it should break below the support. Once it does do that, then we can either re-enter the market. I'm still in this trade. You see I'm up 138 pips so far. And if it does close below the support level, then what I'm going to do is just put a break-even stop loss and stay in this trade, and hopefully this will continue to sell off down to this next support, down to 179. So this is really exciting. You know, every divergence trade is different. Some divergence trade setups, maybe you'll capture 100 pips. The higher the time frame, the better the trade, the longer it will continue to sell off. So let me just give you a few examples of this. On back in, I think I already set it up. There it is. Here's another divergence setup. And the only way you feel confident taking these trades is if you practice. Again, we have price action going in the opposite direction of the wave patterns. Notice that the wave patterns are lining up with swing points. Okay. So this is just a mini lesson on divergence. Okay. So, and I love trading divergence because they're extremely consistent. When you see these setups, I get very excited when I see divergence setups. Give me a second here. I just need to. So there it is. There is the swing point going in the opposite direction of wave patterns, hence divergence. So there's a couple of components to this trade setup, and let me just show you. Again, I have so many YouTube videos on divergence. So if you can't find them, don't worry. Here's a good example. Here's swing points going in the opposite direction of price of MACD, the wave patterns. Then we need a trend line break to confirm divergence. You just don't take divergence just because you see these wave patterns. You need a trend line break. Then we have a trend line break, and notice that price does retrace and bounces off the backside of the trend line and continues to rally. And let's see how many pips this thing went up. Over 390 pips. Okay. On a standard account, that's $3,900 on one contract. So it's always good to wait. I mean, these divergence setups appear every 2 weeks, I believe, on higher time frames, like in a 4-hour chart. On a 1-hour chart, you'll see them happen at least once a week. Okay, let me see if I can find another trade, another divergence setup. And I spent a lot of time analyzing divergence, going back in history, see how many I can find. Here's another one up here. Again, wave patterns going in the opposite direction of price. Now this one, let me see how far. So we have the trend line break, that's the second thing. I look for once the trend line break is broken. I enter a trade, and I'm always anticipating a retracement so I can re-enter the market. And this one did retrace. So the entry is here at trendline break. Let's see how many pips. Market went down. 315. And then it retraced about 161. And then that was the second entry up here. And then it continued to sell off for another 200 pips. That's really exciting. And notice that it retraced and just continued to sell off. And then there was another divergence setup in the opposite direction. And there it is, a trend line break. Actually, that's the one we were just going over. Sorry about that. Here's another one. Is this one it? Yeah, here's another one that was here. It appeared like weeks before. Again, we have wave patterns going in the opposite direction of price. We draw our trend line, and there's a specific way to draw trend lines. You need to connect the swing points, and there it is. There's your trade. There's the retracement, and this one did not sell off as much as the other examples. Here the market sold off 315 pips. I would have exited this trade anyway down here. There's the initial retracement up here, and then it sold off again, but it only went down about 180 pips, which is still good. I mean, 180 pips, I'm sorry, not 180. Yeah, about 180, 197 pips to the downside. That's almost $2,000 on a one contract trade. So that's it for the analysis on this trade. The other trade that we took, the other trade signal was Aussie dollar. And let me just switch over, change this so we can look at Aussie dollar. We had a buy signal in Aussie dollar. The initial target was what, 72.90, I believe. And this thing did complete its retracement all the way up to 73. So we took, again, here's divergence setup on Aussie dollar. We have wave patterns. We have swing points going in the opposite direction. Bear with me here. I've got, here we go. Okay, wave patterns. Here are the swing points going in the opposite direction of MACD. Hence, we have divergence. Then, what do we need to do? This is a 4-hour chart. We draw our trend line break, right? We enter a trade, and there's the retracement. This is very, very typical of divergence. When the market breaks a trend line, then it retraces, and we can enter the market here with a stop loss. Has to be below the swing point, the initial swing point from the day before. And there's our trade. And then we look for targets. I actually use a Fibonacci tool for targets. And this is, you learned this in my course. So there's Fibonacci. I draw it from the swing high to the swing low. And look, 161 retracement, almost to the pip. It closed. It reacted to that level, 161. So that's the target. Okay. So that's it. I hope everyone have a good weekend, and we had a great week. We made over, I think, over 300 pips in 1 week, which is, pretty good. All right. See you guys next week. Have a good weekend.